You're listening to the Spend 10K a Day podcast, brought to you by the performance marketing experts at Mute6. This is your source for cutting-edge insight into the world of online advertising from the team with more Facebook case studies than any other agency on the planet. Here is your host, Susana Magaray.
What's up, spenders? Welcome to Spend 10K a Day podcast, your spot for Facebook ad scale tactics in real time, straight out of our agency Mute6 here in Santa Monica. Our guest today has managed hundreds of millions of dollars in ad spend and leads and develops all of our client creative strategy. He's our very own Chief of Strategy. A warm welcome to Moody Nashawati. Moody, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm really glad to have you here.
Yeah, me too.
So what's it like being on the podcast today?
It's kind of nice. It's kind of nice. Actually, I'm really happy to be here. It's about time. I think we get more technical on our podcast. We've got amazing talent, and so maybe with our podcast, we'll start to get more of the hands-on, the actual tacticians, and I think our listeners will really like that. They'll get to really understand and hear from the people doing the day-to-day strategies.
Yeah, I think so too, because campaign managers are in the campaigns every day, in the trenches,
spending millions of dollars.
Yep, and
every minute.
And they all have a strength individual to them.
Oh yeah,
that we can expand on. And so today we're going to talk about one of your many strengths.
Great, yeah, scaling. So we're talking about audience saturation, I heard.
Yep, audience saturation. It's a hot topic, how to recognize it, how to combat it.
Yep.
What does it take? What's this big secret?
Audience saturation is really important. And, audience saturation is something you have to look at when you're scaling big numbers. And it's the thing that will let you know whether or not you just need to move on. And you want to look at it. So let's take a step back. Audience saturation. Why is it important? What's that number really telling us? Audience saturation tells us, it's made of two things. One, how many people are we targeting, and how many people have we reached of the people we're targeting? That's it. That's all the numbers are telling us. And if you're getting to a point where you have to look at audience saturation, then congratulations. That's a good problem to have. It means you found success. It means you're reaching and scaling to your audience currently, and it's generally a good problem. So the good news is we can help you navigate it, and that's what we think we're going to cover today.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy this topic. So. So you've talked about why it's important to pay attention to audience saturation.
Yeah.
And so then where do we start with that? Where do we check for that? And at what point do we check for that?
Yeah. So audience saturation, you want to start checking for generally towards the at least a few weeks into a campaign. You don't need to look at your audience saturation unless are winning generally. So usually if you're not able to scale, it's a creative problem or a media buying or targeting problem. In the case where you're looking at audience saturation, you've already been running for quite a bit of time. You've reached a substantial amount of people, maybe 20-25% of your current audience. And that's really when you should start looking at when do you want to actually look at these numbers.
So when you're an ads manager and you've been running a so like you said, you've been running a campaign, it's been doing well, and it's doing well because your creative's winning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's at the point where you want to see saturation, is when your creative's winning. What is the
first hint, I think, that your audience saturation is a problem is when you start seeing performance drop. Right?
So your CPA goes down.
Your CPA is suddenly starting to creep up, and you're going, what's going on? Why can't I sustain this forever?
Right.
And that'd be a great thing if you could. But that's probably the first hint that you need to look at this and see what's going on. So luckily, Facebook came out with a bunch of tools that are helpful for looking at your audience insights.
What are those tools?
That tool is Delivery Insights. And if you go in on the ad set level and you just look at delivery, and then there's like a little button with a drop down that says delivery insights. It's weird how they hid this, by the way. It's kind of hard to find. It should have just been a column, I think.
It's like, so it's the delivery column in Ads Manager at the ad set level, and you have to hover over active, like your ad status.
Right.
And then you wait for it to drop down, and you'll see a link. It's not even a button. It's like a little link.
It's like, here's a little text link. Press this button. So you press that button, and it takes you to a dashboard where you can look at a couple things. One of them is audience saturation, where you can see the basically since the time of launch for that ad set, you can see how many people you've reached, how many impressions have been served, how many of those impressions that are being served every day are first-time impressions. And then your, again, reach, and then audience reached ratio, which means how many people of the total audience have you reached cumulatively.
So what are you looking at? There's all there's all this data, like I don't know, there's like 5 columns that they show you in Delivery Insights. What are you looking at right off the bat to determine that audience saturation is happening and you need to take the next step?
So I'm looking at these numbers, and I'm seeing that they're climbing, like the total amount of people I've reached is climbing. And once I get past, maybe like 50%, I know that I'm just not going to get the same sort of response that I'm going to get continuously moving forward. And that doesn't mean that my creative's dead. It just means I got to maybe back off the scale a little bit and let Facebook not bid as heavily to hit those people. And slowly but surely that my creative and that great ad is coming to an end. It's just it's time to move on. And generally we know that we're actively, and you should by then actively be having more creative in the pipeline already, like ready to go. And you don't even have to wait. It's not like you can only run one creative at a time. You're running all of these, and you're bringing in new ideas, learning off of the stuff that's already winning. And hopefully you've already got something that's starting to scale that can come in and take the place of the one creative or multiple pieces of creative that are starting to hit saturation. So it's interesting, like looking at this is a key thing. This Delivery Insights tool is something you want to keep looking at. And again, it's after the fact they've already had success that you want to look at it. This and a number of things. I mean, your KPIs really, like those are this thing is kind of like, I like to think of it like a stethoscope. Doctors use the stethoscope, right? The stethoscope's been around for a couple hundred years. It was invented, I think. And it's got the insight into your body. It allows doctors to hear what's going on. They can put it on the lung. They can hear like the breathing. They can hear your heartbeat. They can hear like where the shortness of breath is happening. And it's this magnificent tool that beforehand doctors were just guessing randomly, like what's wrong with this person. And now like doctors spent, a good 200 years practicing and learning how to use the stethoscope to see inside the body. And it's only up until recently that like the strength of as a tool, that the stethoscope as a being able to literally life or death, like being able to see what's going on. It's only until recently that doctors are getting more advanced tools that the power of that is kind of starting to slip and go away. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because like you'll get doctors like older doctors who've had to have only the stethoscope and are really good at it, and now like the strength of that as a tool is like dissipating, and like you've got younger doctors who usually don't even have to wear the stethoscope. Like they don't even need it anymore. They just kind of wear it as a symbol of being a doctor. But it's this cool thing. And then so when I'm looking at these tools and looking at Delivery Insights, even before Delivery Insights, a lot of times we're guessing, are we reaching saturation? And, we've got tools too. Like we're looking at CPA, CTR, relevancy score, and we're just trying to figure out if we're reaching the limits of this campaign and ad set and ad. And, luckily we've got Facebook's given us our stethoscope to kind of give us a heartbeat of whether or not we'll be able to still continue to get scale out of these assets.
So you were talking about, we were guessing before we had audience saturations or had delivery insights. And so now we have delivery insights. We're able to recognize when we can churn creative. Aside from that, though, a lot of people reference relevancy score as well for deciding when to churn creative. Where does that come into play? Is that as important?
Yeah, relevancy score is important, but at the end of the day, I don't care too much about relevancy score. I think, the first question is, are we making money? Yes. Okay, great. Then who cares about relevancy score? The second question, are we close to making money? Yeah, sort of. How do you know? Well, our cost per purchase is a little high, but our cost per add to cart and our CPCs are really low, and they're giving hints that this could be okay and that these could be winners. Okay, great. Let's keep them on. Let's keep going. And those metrics, like either the cost per purchase, the thing you want, or the things that are really close to the things you want, should be the things that you're looking at to designate your strategies moving forward and whether or not you're pressing go or stop on a campaign.
So you're essentially anyways looking at this data first before you even dive into saturation. I mean, there's really at what point would you look at saturation?
Saturation is, again, something you're looking at when you've had success and your CPA is rising.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So if your CPA is rising and you've already had quite a bit of success, that's when you start looking at saturation.
And then from there, it's a matter of identifying, okay, I've hit, at 50% of saturation. Now it's time to churn creative.
Yeah. Well, so you should have new creative already going. And then you're bringing down the amount you're spending to match, because there's probably a max CPA that you're okay with. So you're bringing down the spend on your ad sets that are reaching saturation to slowly just kind of die. It's sad. It's a sad time for that creative.
So in terms of audience, you have an audience, you have a creative who's doing really well. Do you have to turn off? I mean,
you never turn off on audience saturation.
So the creative is doing really well, and then your CPA starts to go up, but you really love this creative, and you're just really sad you have to turn this creative off. I mean, is it done forever?
Well, it can. So what you do is, first of all, you never get attached to any of your creative. We've learned that. Two, you take that creative and you actually put it into, like a remarketing rotation, where your new creative will start running, and then occasionally, I like to create kind of a drip, like a remarketing drip of the best creative. So if they don't convert on the new hot creative, then maybe they'll after a day they'll see the old creative that maybe they haven't seen yet, or maybe they have seen but they'll remember it and they're like, oh yeah, that's also why I want it. And it's how do you create this drip so you can increase the buying temperature of your audience until they finally pull the trigger. And a lot of times it's not the first instance that they convert on. And hopefully we can all be that good, but that's never the case.
Cool. I think that it's a very in-depth coverage on audience saturation. Is there anything that you would like to add to that?
Yeah. There is one other thing, audience. So occasionally people like to talk about auction overlap as well, as people think that, and this kind of gets roped into audience saturation, but if you've got two audiences or if you've got an audience in two different ad sets and there's a lot of overlap there, people think that's necessary. That could be a bad thing. It's actually not that bad, because you want those creatives to have a chance to win against, in those different audience, in those different ad sets, right? So it's okay. And sometimes getting Facebook to run, to a group of people, even if they're similar to another ad set, that algorithm will figure out a way to optimize better, even if it's got some people overlapped from the previous ad set. And again, audience overlap doesn't mean necessarily that you're bidding against yourself. And there's always going to be audience overlap, and it's something that is actually okay. It doesn't mean you're bidding against yourself, and as long as your auction overlap is under 50%, it's not even a big deal.
I'm really glad you said that, because there is a group out there, a group of people, just a group of people out there that
Yeah.
do.
Are they spenders though?
Yeah, big spenders. Are they scalers?
Yeah.
Yeah, that do kind of have a concern for what they call deduping or audience overlap, too much of that. So
Yeah, I
but
mean, yeah, I don't. It's funny. I think the big lowest hanging fruit is like it's more creative. Like, don't worry about trying to like separate your audiences, especially if you get the right creative. It's gonna work in a broad sense anyway. So you're gonna have really big audiences, and that's actually good. That means that your creative, that Facebook can work with your creative across a lower CPM because you've got a bigger audience, and so you'll see more scale. And a lot of times, I feel like dedupers are focusing in too much on like getting the perfect audience, which ends up limiting people in scale a lot. And that's definitely not how you get to spending 10K a day.
yeah, definitely it gets too granular.
Yeah.
Where there's not enough for you to move
Exactly.
with. Yeah. Great. So what do you think moving forward in terms of, do you think audience saturation is going to become increasingly important in the future, or do you think that's just something to have in your arsenal, or other?
Yeah, I mean it's just I think another tool that we have that makes your media buying better, especially nowadays when Facebook keeps taking away things from us. So it's definitely something you want to look at, but only after you've seen success.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, that's great. I think that covers very thoroughly audience saturation, how to recognize it, how to navigate it. We've covered data to look for. When's the right time to look at saturation? After you've analyzed your data in Ads Manager, and you have a winning creative. We talked about audience overlap and rotating creative in your different funnels of your ad strategy.
Yeah.
So I think that
we covered it.
Yeah.
We covered all of it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thanks, listeners, for tuning in and listening. And if you want to sign up for any of our awesome content or have any questions, go to mute6.com and let us know what you think.